Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about how to keep going during difficult and challenging times. Now, when things are not going your way or you are facing a very testing life challenge, do you want to give up very easily? You're very deflated and defeatist about it. Well, if you've fallen into the habit of doing this or simply avoiding difficult situations altogether, it means that you stay very stuck and blocked in your life and you never reach your true potential. Well, in this week's teaching, we're going to be talking about what causes this self-sabotaging behaviour, how you can overcome this unhealthy habit so you can be much more successful in all aspects of your life. Okay, David, why do we make it so much harder for ourselves when we are facing challenging life situations?
Thanks, Alex. So this is an interesting subject because on many videos we talk about the three lies, and I'll go through this for new subscribers. The three lies are: I'm not good enough, I can't cope, and I'm unlovable or I'm unworthy. We often focus on I'm not good enough or I'm unlovable. It's very rare we talk about I can't cope. This teaching is going to be about I can't cope. So when you make things very difficult for yourself, when you self-doubt yourself, where you're always looking to duck out, where you're looking for the escape route, the get out of jail card free, when you have that constant negative self-talk about I won't be able to do this is going to be too much for me. When you use the words like I'm going to be overwhelmed, I'm going to be washed away, this is the inner child focusing on the second of the three lies, I can't cope.
But I mean, it's like it is pure self-sabotage because, the situation, whether it's to do with a relationship, a family situation, or career, money, finances, day-to-day life is challenging, and we make it so much harder for ourselves when we have this inner child self-sabotaging mindset.
Well, there you've highlighted the problem, because the mature mind will use words like self-sabotaging and making it more difficult for yourself. But the inner child part of your mind, and we'll discuss what the inner child is for those new subscribers, the inner child part of your mind does not see it as self-sabotage. It sees it as a form of emotional protection or safety.
Okay, so what's it trying to protect itself from then?
Yes, it's trying to protect itself from one of the main things it really dislikes, what we call CCJ, being compared, being criticized, or being negatively judged by other people. So the inner child part of the mind will see that as something that is really bad. And that's why it will always want to be perfect, to do it right first time, to be top of the class, top of the heap. It wants to be the best at everything. It wants everyone to be in awe of it. It wants everybody to give it validation and approval and worth. And so if it's in a difficult, tricky situation, that it could see there's a chance that this won't go the way the inner child wants, because the inner child wants the things the way he or she wants it, when he wants it, how he wants it, in the way that it wants it. And when he sees there's a chance, because as you said in the introduction, this is a challenging or tricky situation, now what it wants to do, it wants to slap on the life jacket and jump overboard. It wants to leave.
But I'm kind of wondering, David, what I've heard you just say is that the inner child in all situations, whether it's a challenging life situation or a non-challenging life situation, the inner child wants to be perfect.
Yes.
It doesn't want to be shown up.
No.
So on the one hand, it's setting itself that untenable challenge.
Yes.
But I'm also thinking the inner child also has the habit for worst case scenario thinking. So it's also expecting the absolute worst thing to happen in terms of this particular life challenge that we may be facing?
Bingo. You've hit the nail. You've hit the nail right on the head. Of all the millions of outcomes that are facing you if you're in a challenging situation, if all of the millions of outcomes that you could end up with, the inner child part of your mind will always choose the worst possible outcome. Because it wants to be, and this is what I hear constantly with my clients, it believes that if it chooses the worst, focuses on the worst, perceives the worst, it's better prepared. That's the logic of the inner child. And then when it keeps on making the worst outcome even worse, catastrophizing, is that the word? Mm-hmm. It's a catastrophizing expert. It'll make it worse. And when somebody tries to placate the inner child and say, well, no, that's the worst case scenario, and even if that happened, it wouldn't be that bad, then the inner child will set up making it even worse. I call it the Martians will land. You know, it'll keep on going until it's made it so bad that it can justify itself to jump overboard.
So we've actually got three things going on here. The inner child is working on worst case scenarios. Always. The inner child wants to be perfect in terms of how it deals with the situation. And the inner child is also holding the core belief that it's not going to be able to cope.
That's right. So it doesn't see it. And the inner child, this is why I love this work so much. It's so interesting how our minds work. So the inner child is quite happy to chastise itself, negatively talk about itself, to criticize itself, to damn itself. The inner child's quite happy to do that. But the inner child doesn't want anybody else to do it, because so then what it does, here's the inner child logic. If I criticize myself harshly, if I really knock myself down, if I think of all the worst case scenarios, if somebody else does it, I'm kind of prepared and it won't be so bad. But the problem is the inner child doesn't understand that that becomes a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is my word for it. I'm an old guy, so yeah, I think your modern word is confirmation bias.
Yeah.
I like the word self-fulfilling prophecy. It's setting up a prophecy of failure. So it wants to protect itself. If it does fail, all the bases are covered. And if anybody criticizes it or doubts it or challenges its value, the inner child thinks it's like, perhaps a good way to think about it is taking out an insurance policy. That if the worst case scenario does happen, the inner child has got a policy to cover it. The problem is, if it thinks that way, you're more likely to have a worst case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is why when we've got all these things running in our programming and we are either thinking about the prospect of facing an unfamiliar or challenging situation, or we are presented with it and we don't want to really have to deal with it, no wonder we give up. No wonder we want to run away. No wonder we want to hide under the bed.
Well, I always say to my clients, you have to understand the benefit of the inner child, because my clients will say, as you said at the beginning, this is self-sabotaging, this isn't working. I call it the carousel of despair. So they recognize the carousel of despair. The mature part, the adult part of your mind sees this, but it's almost like you're being dragged down a whirlpool of negativity, because the adult, mature part of your mind is not in control. The part of your mind that we call, and it may be a good time now for new listeners to explain what we mean by the inner child. The inner child part of your mind is the one that's in control. And you are almost like a puppet. You just go along with the inner child. So let me explain what I mean by the inner child. You may be calling it your ego. You may be calling it your negative inner talk, self-talk. Some people call it the devil sitting on the shoulder, a subconscious mind. But in my experience, this part of the mind is extremely powerful because it has a direct connection to your emotions. And that's how it controls and manipulates you, because it uses the emotional manipulation to take control. So that part of your mind had been developed. For me, the relevant times are between the ages of 6 years old and 9 years old. And during those times, something really important was happening in your life. Now, it could be one incident, or it could be a series of dysfunctionality in your family, in the parenting that you were receiving, or what happened when you went to school, or your siblings, or your extended family, maybe your culture, maybe your religion. But something was happening in your life that you could not understand or rationalize in your childlike mind. Nobody ever sat down with you and explained to you what was going on. So you created your own set of childlike reasoning. And that's what I would call the inner child. That is normally is based on what we call the vow, the VOW, the vow, the thing, the number one thing the child says to itself. And that obviously is slightly different for everyone, but it will sound something like, there's something wrong with me. There's something missing in me. And then from that first vow, then comes the 3 lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable, maybe unworthy. And those 3 lies are hiding the vow. There's something missing, something wrong with me. So if you've ever heard yourself say in your self-talk, maybe even to someone else, I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable, stroke unworthy. Then that's the voice of your inner child. And that's the voice that we've got to educate and talk to. And that's why we do these videos, to try and give you the teachings to go down and speak to that part of your mind.
So what we're focusing on here is the I can't cope lie. Yes. So for someone, like a client comes to you and they say, you know, I can see I'm really stuck. I'm really blocked here. I can't step out of my comfort zone. Or when I do inch out, I tend to retreat quite quickly. I can't tough it out. How would you work with them to kind of reprogram that habitual behavior?
Thanks, Alex. That's a lovely question. As obviously I can't be precise because every person's got a uniqueness and we have to find that uniqueness. But I'll talk in general terms and to give you the idea. The lie that I can't cope will normally come from a childhood experience where you were heavily criticized or judged. Not always, but this would be the normal thing. So if this teaching is relating to you, think back in your childhood. Was one of your parents heavily criticizing you, heavily judging you? Was a teacher? Did you go to school and then suddenly find yourself in a different environment where it was very difficult you thought you were doing very well, and then you went to school and you were behind the rest of the children. The teacher wasn't helpful. And then I'll talk about the other CCJs, which normally is criticism, but the CCJ in our model stands for comparing. So were you heavily compared to your siblings? Did you have a sibling that was academically really good, for instance, or sports really good, and you wasn't so good in that area? Did you think your parents favored that sibling? That's another one. C, comparing. C, criticize. Were you criticized? Were your siblings criticizing you? Were you brought up in an environment where criticism, many parents still think one of the best ways to motivate children is to be highly critical of them because it will give them a kick up the rear and they'll get going.
Yeah. Or
were you being judged? Were you living a very judgmental environment that you saw important people, authority figures in your life, parents, grandparents, society, culture, heavily criticizing and always criticizing, being judgmental? That's that CCJ. The result of that will always be the inner child part of you not wanting to be put in that situation and then trying to avoid getting into that situation. So jumping overboard as quick as they can and giving themselves a justification, the reason why they've done it.
So that childhood environment created that core belief within us that we can't cope, and we then carry that core belief from childhood right into adulthood, into all our adult experiences.
Yes, and this will go through all of the adult experiences. And so, again, if this is you, if this teaching is you, you'll probably do much better in some areas than other areas of your life. But this inner tension, this tug of war, I call it, with the inner child part of your mind and the mature part of your mind. So when you get a difficult situation, a challenging, as you said in the introduction, something that's not going quite right, could be your health, for instance, you're going through a bad health period and you're a bit unsure, could be your career, could be that you see the company you're working for being a bit rocky, making people redundant, could be your relationship. You see the relationship. So all of these different areas, then the inner child pops up and goes, this is not going to work. I don't like where we're heading. It's get its telescope out and says, I don't like where we're going towards. So let's now see if we can get out of this. Let's see if we can ditch this situation. Let me, the first thing the inner child will want to do, and this is the life lesson here, is not be accountable. See, the inner child doesn't want someone to turn around and point at them and saying, you've made a mistake here. You've messed up here. It's your fault. You're at fault. So the inner child is now going to be doing everything it can to be in a position not to be accountable, not to take responsibility. And that's what it happens. So the inner child sees it as a benefit. The adult part of you sees it, as you said, self-sabotage. But the inner child is in control because he got control of the emotions.
So when you're working with a client, David, do you have to first get down to the childhood experience or experiences that the client faced, talk that through to be able to, I guess, get the client to understand the origin of this pattern of behaviour?
Yes, Alex, you can't change what you don't understand. So the first task is to understand, so you're fully aware, so you're not in the dark. So you don't say things like, well, this is self-sabotaging, and I don't know why I do this. I hear, oh my goodness, I wish I had $1 for every client that says to me when I say, well, why do you do it? And I go, I don't know why I do it. And this is definitely the inner child, like trying. I always remember my own physical child. When a client says to me, I don't know why, when I ask him, so why do you do that? They go, I don't know why. As my son used to be able to have a cookie and a glass of milk when he came home from school, one cookie, one glass of milk. And he had his cookie and his glass of milk, and about half an hour later, I actually walked into the kitchen and he had his hand in the cookie jar, And I said to him, what are you doing? And he put his hand away and said, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. And that's typical of the inner child. Mm-hmm. So if you say, somebody asks you a question, you say, well, why do you do that? And they go, well, I don't know. That's your inner child not wanting to be accountable. So it will always take away the accountability. He wants somebody else to take the blame, or it wants what I call the fairy godmother of wishful thinking to float in, wave her magic wand, and everything gets sorted out the way the child would like it sorted out. Mm-hmm. And so that's why he doesn't want to do, he doesn't want to do it himself. He wants somebody else to come in, sort it all out, put a pink ribbon on and give it to them and say, there you are, sweetheart. It's all sorted for you now. Nothing to worry about. And then the inner child can toddle on.
So if we understand we're doing this, how do we change it, David?
Yeah. So we do what we call in my model the golden thread, and I love to teach you this, and we've done many teachings on this. If you're interested, look in the archives. We've demonstrated this in great detail. The golden thread is a self-inquiry technique, very simple. The start of the golden thread is very important, and this is where a lot of people get it wrong. Again, I'm going to say this, I say it in every teaching. It's so important for you to understand and think about. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. You are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't create emotions, and that doesn't mean it's human and natural for us to create emotions. And I am not saying don't create emotions, but I am saying be accountable for those emotions you create. Now, a lot of my clients will come on to me for a little bit of help on this golden thread, and I ask them that question, and they go, this is what they say: intellectually, I believe that. And I go, what else have you got except your intellect? And they go, my emotion. But you create the emotion. How can you ground your intellect in an emotion that you're creating? So that's the first step, is to get that clear. Be accountable for creating your emotions. Then when you've got that clear in your mind and you're creating emotions such as self-sabotage
or fear, anxiety, stress,
avoidance, stress, all of these things that you're so quick to say, ask yourself, why have I chosen, listen to what I'm saying, why have I chosen to create that emotion?
Well, the first thing would be, it's because this situation is too hard for me. It's challenging. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
This is a crisis. That's why I've got the emotions.
Okay, sweetheart. And then I would talk to the inner child. See, I've asked one question now. A little Alex has come rushing to the front and she wants to address me. So when you're talking to your inner child, please always call it a little pet name, like sweetheart, little one, son. Just talk to it like you're talking to a 6, 7, 8-year-old child. This works very powerfully. And here's where a lot of people go wrong, because they don't engage and have a conversation with the inner child. For me, I call it a meditation, because meditation is about focusing your mind, listening to what the inner child is saying, and answering and addressing her questions. So on that little example you did when you did the role play,
yeah.
Why do you think this is too much for you, darling?
Well, because it feels overwhelming. I feel sick inside myself and I don't know what I'm doing. And it just seems like a mountain to climb. And I'm out of control. This situation is out of control.
So thank you, Alex. That's a great example. So if you're doing this for yourself, Alex just demonstrated perfectly. Roll the tape back now, about 30 seconds, and listen to what Alex says. She gave me feelings. I feel. So you can't allow the inner child to give you her feelings, because all she does then is put you back onto the carousel. Always remember this. Replace I feel with either I think, I choose, I believe. Why that is so important is because I feel makes her a victim of the feelings. I think, I believe, I choose makes the inner child, little Alex, accountable for her feelings. Now she will go on to the next thing that little Alex did. If you notice, I call it the dump or the machine gun. She will go, brrr, she will rip off 10,000 things. This is what the inner child does. This is the avoidance.
10,000 reasons.
10,000 just
feelings,
talking.
Reasons,
problems, situations. She will reel them off like, you know, like in the cowboy films when that, I think it's called a Gatling gun. They go brrr, and she will reel off all of these reasons why she doesn't want to change. She's stuck. And that's where you have to help her.
Okay. So if I'm acknowledging, though, that I am feeling the physiological feelings, they are there, but we are now going to be talking about what I'm thinking and what I'm believing.
Okay, so hang on. So this is important. I've already acknowledged you are creating the feelings.
Okay.
We do not need to talk about the feelings again.
Okay.
I've acknowledged you are the creator of your emotions. I'm asking you, why do you create those emotions?
Okay. I'm creating the uncomfortable emotions and feelings because I believe the situation is too difficult and I'm going to fail.
Thank you, Don. Perfect. So now you see we got to the problem. So only two questions, but it was difficult because you had to navigate around the avoidance that the inner child does. So why do you believe it's going to be difficult? And why do you believe because it's difficult, you're going to fail?
Well, I believe it's going to be difficult because it's unfamiliar and it's out of my control. And I believe I'm going to fail because whenever I've encountered anything like this in the past, I've given up. I've melted. I've been overwhelmed, and I know I've failed in the past, so it's going to fail again. Nothing's changed.
Okay, darling. Okay, sweetheart. So why do you believe the unfamiliar will be out of your control? If it's unfamiliar, you don't know it.
Yeah, but there's other people involved and I can't control them. I'm trying to, and it's impossible. And this is what's creating all the red light feelings.
Okay. So that's why you're creating the red light feelings. And that's right, because you're trying to control them. Why don't you think about controlling yourself?
Because I guess I believe that if I can control the outside circumstances and the other people involved, then it will make my life easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm tiring myself out.
Exactly. So I'd like to hold your hand and to work with you, sweetheart, to tell you and to show you, and Big Alex would like to do this as well, that if we can work together calmly, it'd be much more effective, much more powerful for you to control yourself. Because you're right, you're absolutely right. You're a clever girl. You cannot control things external to you, people and events, but you can, and we can show you and demonstrate to you without criticizing you, because we know you won't get it right the first time, and that's okay, because we only learn by making mistakes. And we can all do this together, Big Alex, you and me, and we can work through these things over the next few days. And so you can control yourself and learn that you can flow and find your way through every situation, regardless to what other people and outside events outside of you. And to be honest, it's good if it's unfamiliar, because we don't want to go down the familiar road, because the familiar road has never worked for you as in the past. So it'd be better to tread some new snow, tread a new path, and we all tread it together.
But David, what do you mean by control myself?
Yes. So I could ask you, what do you mean by controlling other people?
I guess getting them to do what I believe should be done and what I believe will help provide a quick and easy solution to the situation or the challenge.
Okay. And so therefore, if that's what you mean by control, then what would be a better way for you to control yourself?
Well, I can see first off, definitely to try and control my red light emotions, because physiologically they can be very debilitating. And so I end up focusing on them rather than actually focusing on facing up to and guiding myself through the problem or challenge. So that's the first thing I can control.
But if you ever thought, sweetheart, what it would be like, just imagine, if you can, just play a little game with me. Imagine you were facing this with no red light emotions, just green light emotions, happiness, joy, confidence.
But that's impossible. Most people would say that's impossible to face a difficult or challenging life situation with full of green light feelings, that's like, isn't that like too high an expectation? Isn't that going on the perfection pendulum again?
Yeah, but wouldn't it be, isn't it a ridiculously high expectation to deal with a situation full of red light feelings?
Mm.
Wouldn't it be better to approach this situation with confidence, with self-assurity, with a steadiness, with a clear mind, instead of being dragged down in the dirt and the mire of the red light emotion, stress, tension, anxiety? Wouldn't it be better to address this with your shoulders relaxed, you breathing deeper, you focus? This is a problem. This is a challenging situation. But I know, and I have great faith in you. I think you're a pretty awesome little girl. And with our help, because we'll be right beside you and we'll walk beside you, we'll hold your hand, and we'll be there to support you every step of the way so you can learn. Because the situation is that if you don't learn, then this will return back as into your life. But once you learn how to do it, then you'll be equipped to deal with it, whatever comes your way, whenever it does.
So, David, I know we're talking to the inner child now, but you also mentioned the kind of mature adult parent part of our psyche. So the kind of two halves of our psyche.
Yes, Alex, and this is why I like the analogy. Although I understand it's not perfect and you can punch a lot of holes in it, but I do like this analogy of the inner child, because it allows us, first of all, to do what we've just done, is to talk to that part of the mind in a much different way, rather than being aggressive, critical, rather than repeating. This is what a lot of my clients do. They repeat, and they're even harsher on what their parents have ever been. They're harsher on themselves than anybody has ever been. You can now start to talk to the inner child in a different tone of voice. You can approach her in a different way. And I like that idea of the inner child, because I'd like to put forward that what we're trying to do is the mature part. Big Alex, in this role play that you're playing, Big Alex is like the spiritual mother, and little Alex is like your spiritual child. And she badly needs help. She badly needs someone to be there for her, to stop criticizing her, to stop all the CCJing, to stop beating her up, to allow her to fall down a couple of times, and just to be there to pick her up and to show her the way that, as human beings, every human being, anybody watching this video from all over the world, we only learn by making mistakes. And if you don't learn, and that's why we call these teachings life lessons, because if you don't learn the life lesson, it'll come round. It's like those carousel at the airport. Your baggage will keep on coming around until you take it off the carousel. And until you learn the life lesson, you have to give that inner child that assurity, that support, that she can deal with everything and anything that comes her way.
I'm thinking though that when you said, we need, rather than face and go through testing times and challenges with red light feelings, scared, anxious, panicking, doubt, self-doubting, worst case scenario thinking, striving for perfection, you said we need to approach these situations with confidence, calmness,
love,
self-assurance, clarity.
Peace. Yes.
Trust, I think, is another big word.
All big ones.
But I'm kind of wondering, we're not asking the inner child to do that. What we're saying is that I now, as the adult parent part of my mind, is now going to handle this situation. It's almost like all these years the adult us has not kind of stepped in and taken control of these situations when it's required. We've kind of left the inner child panicking to its own devices, wallowing in the belief that I'm not going to be able to cope, and wallowing in all the kind of sub-beliefs of perfection and disaster. So when you say we need to be confident, self-assured, calm, in control, trusting, we're calling upon, that's the kind of mission that we are now giving the adult parent for the first time. And the adult parent then, once it takes on that mission, then provides assurances to the inner child. We're in this together now, but I'm in control of the situation.
What you just did was absolutely great. And as you developed your own thinking, you come to the end and you said the most important thing. I don't know whether those listening heard what you said. You didn't, you started off saying the adult has to do it or the child. But what we're doing, and this is why Wu Wei Wisdom is different to other models, we're bringing them together into a beautiful oneness that instead of being separate and pulling and fighting against each other, and you causing more difficulty than the outside circumstances have ever caused you, you're coming together in mutual love, trust, confidence, self-assurity, focus, relax. And then the inner child and the adult comes together as one. Now you can address whatever the challenge is from a more authentic situation. I would say a more spiritual, a Shen situation. So you're a lot more flexible. You're a lot more adaptable. You can see the bigger picture. You're not addressing it from a position like a scared cat, 100 foot up in the air. You're much more calm. You're much more focused. And then you'll start to get what we call, as in the West, these flashes of inspiration, of insight, of things coming to you. I call a Taoist the helpers step in, the synchronicity, all of those things. When you're in that state of calm, then all of these natural things that come from you, your deeper knowing, your inner knowing, then you can deal with these much more difficult situations and flow through them. And that's what Wu Wei means, being in your flow, addressing things in your flow. Because I can't promise you a life where you don't never meet a challenge, where everybody's going to do exactly what you want them to do in the way that you want them. That's what the inner child would like, and that's what she's trying to control, but that's impossible.
And so do we have to educate the adult part of our mind as well, insofar as reaching acceptance on universal truths such as the life is unknown, life is unpredictable, we can't control everything, you do not need to be perfect, you are divine already, all these kind of fundamental universal truths that the adult part of us may also be in denial about?
That's such a great question. And this is why we can talk in general terms, and because everyone is unique and their understanding is specific to them. In my general experience, the adult mind always knows this, but is overtaken by the emotions and the power of the inner child. And that's why we run what we call the Shen test. For those of you listening for the first time, the Shen test is when you do this little exercise. Imagine you have one of your favorite nieces or nephews coming to you, and she or he is about 6 or 7, and she says to you, Auntie Alex, I'm having a great difficulty at school, and I really believe that I'm at fault. There's something missing with me. I can't cope in life. And could you tell me how I can control, as everybody else, to get what I want? And what would you say?
I'd say, darling, you don't need to do that. You just need to focus on yourself and do your best. And whatever you manage to do will be the best.
And that's why the Shen test is so powerful. And that's why I think, in general, I can't be precise, but mainly the adult part, the mature part, the parent part, the spiritual parent knows, but they've never applied it to themselves. They are always looking for someone else to apply it. And this is why these teachings are so powerful. And I would say life-changing, because when we're back, you see, we've kind of done a big circuit and we're back to where we started. It's about accountability. It's about self-responsibility. It's about coming and you being your spiritual guide and leader and trusting in you, and to stop this separation that we're giving the label of the inner child and the adult and becoming whole and one and in oneness. And that's why I believe in the Wu Wei Wisdom model. This is a spiritual teaching. You are one. You are awesome. I have absolute trust and faith in you, because I know that you've got through every situation in your life, even as though you've been dragging along a tent on anchor. You've still got through it. And what we want to do is to drop the anchor. We can't change the difficulties, but we can allow you to flow through those difficulties with a lot more ease and grace and more like yourself. And that's what I call being in your flow.
And you know what, David, as you say, we've coped. We've always coped, probably not in the best possible way to the best of our capabilities, but it's like we've almost we're talking about how our inner child's cope, because we've put our inner child in charge of often coping with very difficult, challenging situations.
That's
so
right.
if we use our adult now, if we consciously remind ourselves to step into our Shen, our spiritual self, our adult, our wise self, then we're surely going to cope much better.
And that's why I think the inner child teaching can be powerful when it's taught us in the correct way. It is just a way to be able to open a communication, or what I call a meditation, with that part of the mind, using different words, not being aggressive, not always beating up on yourself, not talking negatively to yourself, but seeing that part of your mind. As a child, as I say in many videos, every time I do this with a client, I'm so honored to be able to go down when the child talks to me, like little Alex did, is to address her, listen to her, listen to what she's saying, try and answer it. And what I'm doing is not telling her to change her mind. That's the last thing I'm doing. I'm trying to educate her, because what the inner child will always do is to see the world through a little pinhole. And what you're trying to do is to widen her perception, because the inner child will dislike, as yours said, about the unfamiliar and the unknown. And so she'll see that as a negative. And we've got to support her and talk to her, answer her questions as we widen her perception. So she starts to make different, more authentic choices. And then we've got to be there, because those choices won't always be right. She will fall on her backside a couple of times, but we've got to be there to lovingly pick her up, dust her down, and say, "Come on now, darling, let's get on with it." In our model, we call it "get back on the bike." Let's get back on the bike. Let's start pedaling. Let's get on with our life. Let's learn that lesson and let's move on.
And I guess until we this inner parenting and the adult self-accountability becomes habitual and familiar, we have to consciously apply ourselves to reassuring, supporting, listening, communicating with the inner child as we go through the journey of whatever testing life situation it is. Because often, we're talking about weeks, months, even years. And until the inner child trusts us, the adult part of us, we need to be constantly mindful that this is an ongoing parenting exercise as well.
Yes, so that's why we've done a series of teachings called reparenting. I don't think it's years, though, Alex. I think it is weeks or months.
Okay.
And it's something that you have to do. I would highly recommend 10, 15 minutes a day that you just sit quietly and meditate. So you're speaking to the inner child, you're listening to the inner child, you're listening to the challenges. Try not to get her to tell or him to tell you about her feelings, how I feel. You want to see what she thinks, chooses, and what she believes. And then you'd start to change your vocabulary, how you speak to the inner child. So what a lot of people will say is, well, I've got to do this for 10 minutes a day. And I go, well, yeah, just think about how much minutes a day you create stress, worry, fear, anxiety. I'm only asking you for 10 minutes to talk to the person that's creating this, of all of these negative red light feelings.
That's brilliant. Thank you, David. And I can put links in the show notes to many of those inner child reparenting teachings that are in our archives, and also other teachings on the CCJ and self-belief to really help you with this topic. If you have enjoyed or benefited from this teaching, please do let us know, and maybe also share it with someone else who you think would also benefit. David works every week with clients all over the world on these sort of issues. If you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one sessions via Zoom, I will put a link in the show notes for those as well. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.